Recording in progress.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining the Reuters webinar, Beyond Silo, One Voice, Aligning Medical Affairs and Commercial for Coherent HCP Engagement and Patient-Centric Impact. Today, we will explore what happens when medical affairs and commercial truly move in step. We are starting with people, purpose, and ways of working, not tools. Our goal is to break down silos and speak with one credible, consistent voice to healthcare professionals. You'll hear how senior leaders in medical affairs and commercial excellence align on shared objectives and operating rhythms that protect brand integrity and keep regulatory realities front and center. What you will take away includes how to personalize at scale across channels while protecting compliance and trust. A human-centered blueprint to turn strategy into measurable results. We hope you enjoy the session. We'll keep this webinar interactive, so please post your questions in the Q&A chat at any time. With that, let's get started. It's my pleasure to introduce our moderator and the sponsor of this webinar, a leader who helps organizations connect customer impact with operational excellence. Please welcome Claire Saint-Hilaire, Partner, Customer and Commercial Excellence at Eranius. Class, over to you.
Thank you very much, Carla. Hello, everyone, and great that you are either joining us live or are watching the recording. So why are we here today? So as industry experts, we support many organizations, and we have many engagements that are focusing on breaking down the silos and creating synergies between medical affairs and commercial. There are a lot of questions, and we see also from the registrations that we have for this webinar that this is still a hot topic, even though it is around for quite a long time. So now we are here with some industry leaders as well who are going to support us. And now I think it's time to introduce the takeaways that we want to give to you. So our goal is today to leave you with actionable insights that maybe help you to detect misalignment early, to learn strategies for building and sustaining cross-functional trust, and also maybe create a shared language between the teams. Now, as you can see, there are 3 other people here. And we are going to start with Iria Gada, VP Digital and Customer Engagement at Novo Nordisk. Thank you for joining, Iria.
Hello.
We have Patrick Laroche, Vice President, Head of Medical Affairs of the EMEA region for Johnson & Johnson Innovative Medicine. Thank you for joining, Patrick.
I'm doing very well.
And then we have Berkan Ayzan, Director at Merck, and he's responsible for the strategy for digital health and rare disease. And his views as a former medical doctor will be invaluable for today's conversation. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, hello, everyone.
So before we start, just some administrative tasks. First of all, on behalf of the panelists, I want to make a small disclaimer that everything that you're going to hear today is based on their own experiences and opinions and is not representing their companies or employers. You heard about the Q&A, so I don't need to dive into this too much. So we're going to look into what you're writing in the Q&A section. If we can address them during the session, we will do this already. And other than that, we also have a dedicated Q&A segment at the end. Good. So enough of me speaking. Let's maybe start and jump right in to the first topic. So first topic we have coined most common misalignments and maybe early detection. So when we work with clients, we frequently encounter this misalignment between medical affairs and commercial when engaging HCPs. from your experience, what are the most common misalignments and how do you detect them before they impact consistency or credibility, maybe?
I'm happy to start.
Good.
I could say that we've made a huge progress in general in pharma in the last years. And my view is that COVID helped a lot to this. Probably because before COVID, a lot of the activities were happening face-to-face, and it was not so easy to track when misalignments or overlappings or whatever were happening. With COVID, it came a more clear digitalization, where it was not only easier to reach customers, also to measure what we were doing with them, which was the impact of them. So I would love to say that we have always been super proactive identifying this misalignment, but the reality probably in many cases we have been reactive. So it has been when we identified that the customer perceived that sometimes we were not so coordinated, or sometimes we were not approaching with the same voice. And it was the time to see, okay, which is the big problem we're trying to solve, and how can we have a broader customer view and a better orchestration around the customer. But as I said, I think that there is some hope. A huge progress has been made in the last years.
I can take it from there. Or Patrick, please.
No, go ahead, Berkan, and then I will take over, please.
For me, because it's amazing to build on from Iria what she said and digital footprint. So for me, misalignment almost never starts with the operations. I think it starts strategically with two main points. So the first one, I would say, when teams operate with different customer definitions, this disconnects, creates early misalignments, and when medical and commercial use, let's say, not the same segmentation or taxonomies, and once the customer view diverges, the journeys, content, the measurement drift immediately. So I think it's important that we align that customer definition. This is the first one. And the second one, I think when the teams are operating under rising launch pressures, right? When you look at the numbers, like top 20 pharma companies, more than 90% of them expecting to launch more products upcoming 5 years. And the same companies, more than 50%, they're looking to keep their workforce flat. So this means 361 people in this room expected to deliver more with less. So, and when the pressure is high, even small inconsistencies can break alignments, right? And in my opinion, the solution is what Iria actually said, which is the CRM highlights these misalignments faster than any meeting, especially post-COVID. So if a HCP receives inconsistent journey, messaging, scientific framings, it means that internal foundation already lacks some coherence. So,
Patrick, your take?
Yeah, I can, of course, build on that, right? And obviously, concrete example of misalignment, like mentioned from my side, probably lack of awareness of what the other are doing. Like I've been visiting Dr. X and I was not aware you were visiting him because I can actually not see your activity. And it could be also lack of alignment in terms of messages or priorities. It could be lack of alignment in terms of budget investment. Why are we doing this study and why are we investing there? So there's probably many questions, but I don't think that it only relates to medical and commercial, right? It exists in any organization where you would have functional silos, right? For example, depending on where medical is sitting in your organization, you can have exactly the same question between medical and R&D, for example, right? So I guess that it's more a question of how do you break silos when operations are happening within the functions, right? That probably the question that we need to solve. And the good thing is that we have many examples, as Ilya was saying, of many progress that we've been doing. I should confess that in my organization, I don't see that anymore as a major issue, and be happy to share a bit my perspective on that. But I revert back to you, class, if you have further question on the matter of exploring the issues that we have.
So I think then you're a step ahead of some of the participants here as well in overall in the webinar, and they are certainly going to look forward to hear about your opinion there. Just one question before we maybe go to the pitfalls and the corrections that you have taken for the initiatives here. Looking into research, looking into all of the events that are happening out there, we have seen that a lot of people say, well, if we do omnichannel and there is AI, everything is going to be solved. Now with that keeping in mind and the HCP experience, are you leveraging any of the technologies to support you breaking down the silo or bridging the gap, building a bridge? I don't know, something that you can shed some light on that helped you in looking into this?
I'm an engineer as a background. I'm working in customer engagement for probably my whole life. I'm sorry to say, technology is never the solution. Technology can send the people to the moon. So if it could be the solution, only technology, probably would not be where we are. When you want to implement digital transformation, it's a triangle. Process, people, and platforms. You can have the best technology in the world, but if you don't have the processes to orchestrate around that, and you don't have the right capabilities for the people to use it, it's just an expensive gadget. Don't take me wrong. It's true that technology is going to highlight or to bring to the surface some of the problems, but it's not going to be the solution itself. Sometimes the orchestration is as easy as going to a flip chart and say, which are the different messages that we want to throw to a doctor? Or how are we going to identify the persona attributes for a doctor so we are consistent? You don't need technology for that. You only need to sit together. And I think a huge progress in the last year is in the vast majority of the big companies, of the big pharmas, customer engagement is not in marketing nor in medical any longer. So we can be, as I always say, we can be the shoes of the customer. And whenever we have marketing or we have medical, we can always say, but do you know how this impact? So yes, for sure, we can have, and Berkan said, we can have our CRM that probably should be our source of truth. If all the marketeers, all the sales, all the medics were introducing the right information there, it probably would be the right source of truth if the marketeers and the medics in the back office were reviewing the insights from that platform and were acting on that. You see, there are many if for this to work. So yes, for sure, we use technology. For sure, we'll use AI. And sorry for the people listening to me, but AI is cheating shit out. If our data quality is not good enough, we will never be able to build a good algorithm to give us answers. So technology should come at the end of the spectrum, should come at the end of the journey when we have the right processes, when we have the right capabilities, when we have the right ways of working, the right measurements, then we implement the technology just to execute. Class, I don't know if this is what you wanted to hear as part of this.
Personally, we're totally aligned there. I think that it's certainly an enabler that it is right, and from our perspective, it is a good way to start the conversation. What do we need to talk about, especially now with the whole transformation in the CRM space, right? That is like where everyone is talking about the blue versus the orange giant. But this is certainly starting discussions which are necessary once in a while. Do you have a point of view, Patrick, on this one? Or you, Berkan?
No, I mean, maybe elaborating on your previous question, class, right? Which was, is tech is tech a solution? Definitely, it is a solution on some aspect, right? But just want also to build on what Ilya was saying, because, and I might express it slightly differently, but we would go to the same point, right? I mean, I'm an old enough guy to basically have seen different technology wave in my life from my childhood, where informatics came in the house and the company, and we thought that human problem would be solved by informatics. And then you had the same with web, and then you have the same happening with AI, right? And at the heart of what you need to accomplish when you have to break silos between functions stand leadership, first and foremost. Second, organization. There are organizational solutions for it, right? And the third one, and probably one of the most critical as well, is the cultural element, right? So the ways of working and behaviors of your organization. And tech is an enabler for sure, right? But if you don't have the three first that are actually in place and aligned, then you won't probably not get where you want to go, right? That's a little bit the point. Now, I mean, from a tech perspective, of course, right? The way we process data and what AI has allowed us to do is a great opportunity. I mean, I saw some comment in the Q&A about how can you harness impact metrics, or how can you monitor some of the things that we were probably not able to monitor before. But also as well, you know, when you're curating a CRM to make sure that the medical part and the commercial part stays, though communicating but separated on some aspect, of course, that technology is of a great help, and we can dive into that. But I just want to go back on what I was just mentioning. If you don't have the leadership element, if you don't have the organizational element, and if you don't get the cultural element, you're just missing the point.
Great. So now maybe looking into, and some of the questions that I saw in the chat are going into a similar direction, is what are the biggest challenges that you have been facing, like between medical affairs and commercial and their alignment there? And what was the course correction that helped you to ensure getting there?
Okay, I don't want to hijack the speech, dears, right? But I can start if you want.
Okay.
Please do.
Yeah. So I think very practically speaking, what I faced was that the first thing that need to be built is an alignment across the organization about the purpose and the mission of us as a whole, right? And why are we there? So simply speaking, right, if you think about it, I mean, the way our innovation find their place to patient is still very unsatisfactory, I would say, right? I mean, we all know that there's probably 30% of patients that are basically treated according to the latest evidence, even in situation where actually innovation are accessible, right? So it's not even an access issue, and actually transforming habits that are entrenched is really hard, right? And I think in many companies, and the advent of science in the last 20 years, I've seen very transformative innovation coming to the market, and I think there is a level of indisputable evidence for it. My point is that science is accelerating at the pace like never before, frankly speaking, right? Okay. Then I believe that when you work into a function, the first thing that you need to focus on once the mission is clear for your organization is how do you take accountability for it, okay? And that's also very important to align amongst leaders to basically say, look, once we're aligned on where we want to go, let's drive the accountability of our respective function as such. So I give you a very practical example. Medical affairs is responsible for medical affairs outcome, right? And I pay a lot of attention to monitoring performance to make sure that on a daily basis, we come as a better version of ourselves. And this is truly important because it creates also trust into the organization that any function organization is managed as it should be from a performance focus perspective, right? And I think, yeah, the third element is also to provide a little bit any function a sense of enterprise leadership, because you can sometimes work, you know, in your funnel, in your bubble, but many decisions that are taken because there are multi-parameters that are going around and many people are actually not aware about that. So if you build a little bit more up the why and you communicate more on a cross-functional basis, then people sense, why are we making the choice that we are making? Because trust is a fundamental element. If you manage to build trust across the organization, honestly, you see that 50% of the issues are actually getting solved.
Great. Iria, Burkhan, anything that from your perspective, Patrick has not said that you want to add on?
I can add on that, class. So I think Iria and Patrick have been very pragmatic so far, talking about the people, which is the center of transformation. So I can be a bit more academic, I think. So talking about the technology side. I mean, one of the other challenges I see is the fragmented systems, right? So, and this is for me quite a challenge to having multiple systems that do not communicate. And this forces teams to navigate different interfaces and workflows, which naturally reduces alignment and adoption. And second important thing that is connected to the first one, in top 20 pharma, M&A is the reality, right? Over 70% of the innovation is actually coming externally. So through these acquisitions, teams inherit different narratives, different platforms, and the challenge is integrating this multiple scientific narratives and sometimes even CRMs. And now that we have more options, right, there will be more and more harder, I would say. If this is not harmonized early, I think it's quite a big challenge. And the third one, for me, is the disconnect between HCP and patient journey. When we talk about HCP engagement, I think we are not speaking enough about the patient. So in essence, pharma is a B2B2C business, right? So maybe not aligning from that B2B side, but aligning from that B2C side, meaning if we all internally have that patient mindset as a go-to thinking style, I think the alignment would come a bit more natural. And this is really needed because healthcare systems are not at the right operational model for innovative therapies. And if we want to change this, we need to take accountability of things that maybe sometimes not under our remit. So this is what I believe. To drive a change, you need to take extra accountability.
And if may I, class, bring a little bit a different perspective. I also think it's good that we look forward with everything that still needs to be done, but it's also good sometimes that look backward with everything we achieve. So if we want to have a consumer brand approach, probably this is not the place. But we also need to be fair to say, and it's not because Patrick is here and we appreciate each other, but omnichannel or multi-channel or whatever you want to call it started with marketing. So in one moment on time, when we were shouting to our medics and say, come on, you are too late, the reality is they were not on board in the journey probably for 3-4 years. And that happened because customer engagement teams, normally they were part of omnichannel managers, part of marketeers, part of how we were going to split the message, how we were going to connect with the customers. When we realized that there was a gap on the message sharing, we wanted to solve 4 years gap in 4 months, for medics, where probably they didn't have the knowledge, they didn't have the capabilities, probably they were not there even on the mindset on the problem to solve. I feel that this gap has been closed, probably as Patrick said, because this was a clear message from leadership. Also because what Berkan said, now we have data that shows that, and we're able to understand our customer preferences and the impact on that. But we need to acknowledge that probably this conversation class has been coming once and again during the last years, because we were in a totally different reality from the marketing readiness and the medical readiness to approach this one customer-centric view.
True. And I think that is also like exactly like raising the need to really work together, right? Because otherwise now everything is easier, everything is faster. And thing with data is, even if you have the data, it's sometimes up for interpretation. So if one side does one thing, the other one might see it differently, right? But it's actually bringing us maybe over now to the second part of the conversation that we wanted to have with regards to omnichannel personalization and data in that sense. In the very beginning, you already started to allude to it, Patrick, with regards to a shared language and vision, right? And making sure that you have maybe the same segmentation logic, the same understanding of what a customer is, right? How did you achieve this, if you did, in your companies?
Yeah, I can speak on that. So we go to a little bit which are the solutions, right? Let me just expand on one thing, because there are also an organizational aspect to it, right? Which doesn't only sit into technology. One of the solution, I'm not saying that this is the solution, because I guess that there are many ways of addressing it, but at least one of the solution that I know is to master the matrix organization. Really important, right? So for example, the way we work is that we work through integrated brand value team, which means that marketing, medical, market access, regulatory, legal are sitting there all together, right? And they're looking at the strategy of the brand, the strategy of the innovation, and they're basically aligning on which are the priorities between function to be achieved. So I think to have really this hat is super important, because otherwise, if you don't have this alignment, and that speaks also to leadership, right? You're probably missing a little bit the opportunity to align the organization. For me, leadership alignment is the biggest driver change in any organization. Let's be very clear with that. Now, when it comes to system, obviously to the point of we've invested a lot and we've developed a lot our capabilities around system, platform, CRMs in the last years. It was a little bit immature because, to your point, it was mainly invested into commercial, probably also for different reasons, resistance to change, or the fact that we were not really capturing the opportunity. It didn't came to medical affairs. But we have a CRM that is running for medical affairs with a segmentation. Of course, it's not the same segmentation than the commercial segmentation, but each other speaks to it, which means that it has also a logic in terms of influence of the customer that we're speaking to, their degree of appetence for innovation, and so forth, right? So it follows obviously a logic that is very parallel to that. We're basically having target segments. We're having also an ambition of volume of engagement per segments. We're also identifying insights through advanced, so GenAI, which help us also to tailor the message based on what is the main question that our customers are having. So I think that in a few years, we gain a lot of maturity into that field. And what does that mean is that if you're a customer-facing function, you have a plan of action. And at the end of the day, this is what makes the difference, right? So that's, I think, what we try to achieve, but always in sync across the organization. And I pause there to pass the ball to Berkan.
Pass to me, Patrick.
Yeah, sure.
I can.
We hear you a little bit far away, Berkan, all of a sudden. I don't know why.
Do you hear me now?
Yeah, much better.
Okay. So I just want to add one thing on that, because this is exactly what we do. And, it is hard to say one segmentation model, because of course it's different, but they speak to each other. And what we did, which was really useful for us, there are tools that give big data sets about how HCPs create relationships, what do they publish, where do they go, and all this, let's say, a LinkedIn type of big data sets only for the HCPs. And we have plugged these big data sets into our model so that it's really helping us create that connection between medical and commercial. So it's fully aligned on what you said, Patrick. And we also found a lot of success on that model.
And if may I add, I think that probably some people from the audience would say, come on, this sounds so easy. I think that the logic is easy. The complication comes on the implementation at the end. So as Patrick said, you have top management that is already organizing the organization in a way that you force the people to work together to solve a problem. Perfect. Then you have the processes that will allow to identify some core things, and you can name them. Can be, as Patrick was saying, okay, which is the segmentation? Can we talk about the same things? Can be something about customer preferences, because the reality is customer preferences are going to be exactly the same, independent if it's coming from marketing or from medical. If a customer likes to work digitally, likes to work digitally. And if a customer likes blue. It's not going to be different because we make it different. So you can harmonize around customer preferences. You can harmonize about customer channels. You can harmonize building an editorial calendar when for sure everyone knows who is going to go to talk to whom about what. But even if you have the master plan, then this needs to be translated to the market, where they need to say, okay, but what it means for us, but then needs to be translated to the last line of execution. That is front line, that is back office, that is the capabilities, that is the journey. My suggestion for anyone that goes to go through this, and I can say it can be done, is you need to have the big master plan, but then slice it. Because the big master plan is overwhelming. If you go to the person on the field and say, now we're going to change the segmentation, and we're going to change the profile, and we're going to change the message, and we're going to change this, and we're going to change the CRM, welcome to the change. I think that we just need to say who needs to make small tweaks in each part of the journey, and then which is the benefit for everyone to do that extra mile. So probably for the person on the field, the benefit is that they will know before going to visit a doctor class who was talking to him, if he was to some specific channels, or which are the things that he prefers. Probably that would be the reality for them. And then the magic needs to happen before the staff. So my message is, can be done. Start with something. If you don't have the right data to do customer segmentation or customer preferences, start with an editorial calendar. If you have the best data, then you can go full in with the preferences, customizing the channel and customizing the content, but just start moving the needle and celebrate and embrace the change. It's not going to be easy, but if you ask the customers, it will be quite rewarding for them, and then I think for everyone around the journey. So that would be probably my 2 cents on this. It's not easy, but can be done. Just start.
Iria, I couldn't figure out how to send cards in Zoom, but I fully agree. Not that digitally, I guess.
It's always a step-by-step approach, and you need to, well, start somewhere to achieve at some point the holy grail of Customer 360, which has moved in definition probably ever since I'm in that segment, because Customer 360 grew, and oh, this is as well, and this is as well. But there's certainly a point where if you even reach the Customer 360, how do you ensure that you have practices in work and in place that work to make sure that this is also continuing to support the teams? So how do you ensure that medical affairs and commercial, it's not a one-off topic to bring them together, right? How do you make sure that they are continuing to engage? What is the best practice that you would share with the audience to say, that's how we align the two teams?
I mean, I can jump on that, right? And I spoke a little bit to it. I think that's where the organizational strategy come into place. I mean, when I was describing this integrated value team, they are basically meeting on a very regular basis, and they are fed by everything which is happening in their respective function, right? So there is a governance element to it. If you don't have governance element to it, it's a little bit more complicated, to be very frank. At least that's how I see it. The other thing is that the content per se is also an important dimension. So I can share, for example, that commercial priorities are discussed as well as medical priorities are discussed, right? We are having in medical affairs, so very clear dimension that we are working on, either on behavioral change for customer or either on harnessing some insights. And if we speak about insight, these insights are feeding, of course, the strategic conversation into this integrated brand value team, right? So I guess for me, it's more something that has to do with organizational strategy and the culture, right? Because if you don't, and you just need to be interested into the meta mission that we are all here for, right? Is that our innovation find their way to the patient. Huh? Okay, so I mean, everyone are basically looking into that direction, and I think when this is clear for everyone, right? I mean, commercial play a component, medical affairs play a component, market access play a component, the whole company play a component into that, right?
And I would only add to what Patrick said, it's critical to have shared scorecard, shared goals. Because then, you know, somehow you're telling people that you are expecting them to arrive to that together. Give them some times. Are they going to do it through dashboards? Are they going to do it through monthly meetings? Are they going to do it? Okay, probably it's going to take some back and forward. But if it's clear that there are some shared goals, that there are some, in a compliance manner, some shared scorecards that is like, okay, this needs to be delivered by this team as a whole, then you are already providing that direction for people to see it. And as I said before, can be as simple as, can you review an editorial calendar to ensure that it still makes sense? Or as complex as Patrick said, you know, how we are mobilizing the influencers or how we are mobilizing whatever needs to be as part of that, that probably is going to take more complexity. But if you don't have shared goals, it's going to be very difficult to make it recurrent after the once a year alignment meeting, and then let's wait until April next year, and then let's do it again.
And jumping in there, maybe also looking into the chat, there are a lot of questions related to one of the things that you said here, shared goals, and basically like how to measure effectiveness of that collaboration, right? Because on the one hand side, everyone says we should tear down the silo, they should work together. How do you measure the effectiveness, the impact of the collaboration?
I think it's a very, and Patrick, then you can please jump in, but I think it's a very old-fashioned way of doing it, that is just measuring customer satisfaction. You know, there is someone in the world that is called the customer. Would be good to ask them, you know, do you think that you are better treated, that is clearer what we provide to you as a company now than what it was before? And this is something that you can make as sophisticated or as basic as you want, you know, coming back to the point on don't be limited by the technology, don't be limited by the data. But if you start working a different manner that you think that is going to be much more coordinated, much more customer-centric, why don't you ask your customer in 3 months, in 5 months, is seeing a benefit, is seeing this much more? If the answer is like, I have no clue, I see that you are totally misaligned as you were before, probably you need to recheck what you were doing. From my experience, the customer is perceiving in 3-6 months really the change on orchestrating, organizing around them, and so on. From compliance perspective, for sure, there are many goals that cannot be shared, but the customer impact, for sure, is one that you can see, okay, is the customer perceiving that what we are doing is more relevant for them? Is the content that we are providing for one specific type of performance, a type of persona, more impactful than it was before? Is this working or not? There are some tangible short-term metrics that can be implemented. Sorry, Patrick.
No, don't be sorry. I mean, you wanted to add something, Berkan, because I saw you on the verge of, and I can speak after you if you would like to.
You need to come a step closer.
IT, I gotta change my laptop. So, how is it now?
It's still a little bit blurred or far away, right?
What about now?
Yeah, it's much better. You did something.
Okay. I didn't do anything. I just hit it and it just stopped working. So the next thing to HCP outcomes, which I really, really love what you said, Ria, I would also add the operational ones, which is you clearly see in the time of launch. I don't want to say launch excellence, but some companies also has the privilege to have different launches simultaneously. And when you have this integrated value teams, you can compare it so fast. Who has fewer escalations, faster content approvals, lower message drifts, and you can literally see the delta between different launches. And if you have a base case scenario that you believe in, and after that it becomes really smooth to extrapolate that. And to Patrick's and Iria said also that senior leadership is super important, but you cannot go to them with academic hypothesis. So if you can actually prove that through this approach, your launches become way more effective, faster, precision, efficiency, then you have a case to change the way the organization is moving forward.
Yeah. And I was also in the chat reading the many questions that we have on compliance, and I think we need to address this one at some point. This
is the next question. There's like the elephant in the room that I was keeping as the last question.
but on how do we manage as you say, shared goals, and how do we manage metrics and so forth and so forth. So I can speak to what I know, which is we're basically indeed monitoring customer satisfaction, and we have loyalty surveys, right? And loyalty surveys are basically shared across teams. And that also speaks to the fact that not only we are an industry that altogether is basically pushing for innovation, but we are also an industry competitive in a sense. So all the company are competing to each other, which is, I want to recall the audience, a key factor in accelerating innovation. Competition is one of the conditions of the acceleration of innovation. Without competition, you generally go much slower. So it's a good thing. That's what I want to stress. So we are also ranking ourselves towards some other company based on some dimension. Does our MSL provide the most relevant information to customers? And sometimes yes, sometimes no. And in both cases, we always look for ways of improving that. But because we have the data point, and because we can share also these data points between function, that actually informs strategy, that actually informs action plans that we have in place. So I think they are, shared in a kind of transparent manner, and it's also a little bit the segue to compliance, right? I mean, let's be clear, huh? There are things that actually cannot be shared or that cannot represent a joint metric. But there are plenty of things that actually can be shared, and there are plenty of things where we can reconcile joint metrics. Customer satisfaction or customer perception is one of them.
Mm-hmm. Now but it's one of the questions that often came up, but some of the things that we also see in the engagements that we are having, that there's often they quote one of our clients, we should not talk to each other. That is a very harsh statement, but like looking into this, you said already there are some bits and pieces where you can do this. How do you ensure that you are, while you're aligning, still staying compliant?
So, I mean, I can also speak on that if you want. So first, there are a few things that medical affairs should remain independent too, like basically linking their activities and linking their investment directly to sales, not company performance, sales, right? Okay, so that's one. The other thing is that there are some sensitive information, like for example, off-label information that should basically remain in the space of medical affairs. Even though it's a little bit, of course, something that takes time, right? I mean, there are plenty of examples or ways to curate systems to make sure that actually this integrity is being maintained. I mean, that's the case, for example, for CRM. There are things that can easily be, merged or visualized together, but there are things that should be visualized independently. And I guess that, for example, the advent of GenAI is a great opportunity there because, in the insight reporting, there has always been a little bit this sensitivity of saying, what if we would report off-label information that will be visible by the commercial team? But actually now with GenAI, you have such a power of curating your systems and making sure that actually this information gets triaged upfront, that makes our life much easier. That's the same for PV reporting. That's the same also for, sometimes a little bit weird comment that you can find because we are just all human being, right? So things can be curated and that's a great thing. So I think, and system can speak to each other. After there are people, huh? Okay, because we are just human. And I think on the people side, it speaks to the culture of your organization. It also speaks to the fact, at least from my point of view, that my healthcare compliance officer is a partner, right? So the conversation is, I need your help because I have an objective, and help me to define how I can get to that objective while respecting the compliance principle, right? And I'm not asking for an answer which is this is what you're allowed to do and this is what you're not allowed to do. I'm waiting for help, a support to design a way, okay? And guess what? I mean, in many situations, of course, there is a way. It needs some adaptation, flexibility. Things are rarely resulting in what you imagine they would be at the beginning. But at the end of the day, if you get to 70% of your objective, I mean, I'm happy with that, right? Okay, because it helps to move on.
Mm-hmm.
And adding to this, probably the only thing I can add is, from my experience working in different companies, see your legal compliance colleagues, the sooner the better with you. Because the reality is they are to help you. They are not there to be the bad cops or whatever. So explain probably not the solution, explain the problem you're trying to solve. And maybe there is a different solution to arrive there so you can be compliant in the different market requirements. So I would say bring the people on board, the sooner the better. Share the problem, not only share which is your solution in mind. Yes, for sure, there are things that for different great reasons cannot be done, but there are many others that can be done if you just involve them with the right bandwidth to think together, which is the real problem you're trying to solve. Because maybe to solve that problem is not your solution the only one that will arrive there.
Great.
I just want to add one more thing, right? I think MLR compliance has to be the part of this integrated value team, right? So they become the part of design, not a policy, as Iria said. I think there's benefit for them as well in this, right? You involve them early, one evidence source, one approval logic. No, of course, there will be back and forth, but less and less, and clear traceability for everyone. So I don't see compliance as someone that we need to avoid and has to be the last question that we need to answer, but actually bring them in. Instead of we ask them the questions, they can ask some, not just even questions, but give us the framework that we need to play in. Because whether we accept it or not, we're in healthcare business, right? We are not selling coffee cups to people. At the end of the day, and the end of the line, there is a real patient lives. So we need to take this seriously. And compliance MLR is there for a reason. We need to utilize those people. So appreciate that, Iria, Patrick. I fully agree.
Thank you very much for this. Now, looking at the time, we had one part which was planned to be a bit longer, and I now ask you to maybe just give me one thing before we move into like answering one or two questions. One thing that you would recommend the viewers to implement tomorrow to make the first step for this alignment. What is the thing that you would say, focus on this as your first step?
Focus on the things that there are less. So depend on your company maturity. If your company hasn't started the journey yet, go for the things that there are less controversial. Don't try to align a strategy first, because it's going to be probably very challenging for people to get there on the thinking. Start with customer preference. Start with customer channels. Start with customer interest. I think this is going to make people feel that it's already having an impact today, while they are mentally and organizational ready to organize the strategy that at the end is what is going to make the long-lasting impact. But if your structure is not organized to put people sitting together, if the people is not mentally ready to start working together on a brand plan, I would not suggest to start there. I would feel that probably would be a little bit overwhelming for people to start there if the leadership is not in that mindset. But you can start with things that maybe are less controversial and easier for people, which are the customer preferences. Can you harmonize to work on the same channels and with the same tone?
I would say fall in love with the patient impact, not just generating users' data. And I think we are all a bit too obsessed with data nowadays. So that's what I would suggest. And tangibly, the first, I would say, unified customer definition. It's really important. The second is integrated ecosystems. So trying to not have these fragmented models, so that one day maybe we can be ready really for this agentic AIs and creating those insights through Gen AI. And the third one is the joint governance model, right? Create those integrated value teams, talk to each other as early as possible, and then you will find the right answer for your own company.
And Class, to your question, can you allow me to give three things just to follow a bit a trail of
Sure.
thoughts? Because I talk about leadership, organization, and culture. I'm gonna say only two because that can speaks to the organizational, which is put in place really this cross-functional value team. That's a condition. I would stress the importance of leadership alignment. In my career, I noticed that at the highest level of organization, sometimes leaders are not so much in the granularity of the friction or the difficulties of collaboration between function. They know, but the reality, the day-to-day reality, a little bit is a little bit further away, right? And I think that it's really important that if you're a leader, you work on building this joint narrative that you will carry across function. And if you're basically not a leader who is in charge of that, that basically you turn back to your leadership and you say, we need really your help on that, right? So that's one thing. And then the cultural element is very basic, but I think this is a topic that is polarized enough, right? Like people feel that they are really in different castle facing each other, that what is needed is actually depolarization, right? In order to solve that. So, I mean, I know two sentences that I'm using very often. The first is, I need your help, right? Because it's rare that people refuse to help you. And the second thing is that I like to keep things pragmatic at the end of the day. So I generally ask, what does that take to make it happen? That instead of, complaining of things that are not in our sphere of control, we basically focus on some few pragmatic solutions that are actually in our sphere of control. That would be the advice that I would give to the audience.
Thank you very much. Taking this one and putting this a bit together, I think from my perspective and what we have seen, what worked was exactly the mix between what you said. The reason why I'm saying is that the mix is you have short-term goals in terms of like we're making an impact now, which is basically what Ria said. Mid-term goals with its like fragmented systems, etc. What you said, Berkan, and then the things that you said, Patrick, with regards to culture and strategy. The thing is, they probably all need to start at the same time, because if you are like not starting tomorrow with culture, you're going to start in a year with culture, and it takes you then still quite a while to get culture in, because it's like a very difficult thing to do, right? So fair enough. So now, looking at the time, we'll probably get another question in. We answered some on the way. There was one question which came like 3-4 times, which was basically related to, so you want to bring together medical affairs and commercial, but how do you actually make sure that you have the same messaging to HCP and patient, right? How can you bring those kind of messaging out that they are not confusing that one if you're sending a message out? This is something which has been named. Any thoughts on this?
Happy to build on that. So what we've defined is that basically you have core asset team and disease asset team, right, which are represented by also messages. Obviously, medical affair speaks often to also the way disease is managed and the environmental factors of managing a given disease. So, I mean, we are basically aligning on which are the kind of priorities, communication priorities that both commercial and medical affair will carry. So that's how it works. And we do have in medical affairs listening priorities. So towards the communication priority, we basically listen to what our customer are basically saying. And that's where GenAI is really interesting, because before it was really a pain. So now you can take some unstructured text and you get that proceed, and it's much easier, right? You can even derive sentiment analysis or whatever. I mean, it gets pretty fancy, frankly speaking. And then, of course, right, all this is basically feeding back into your strategy, right? So actually, short answer to your question, yes, we are doing it, making sure that we keep the integrity into what we do.
And the only thing I would add is I don't think it's the same message. It's consistent or complementary messages.
Absolutely,
You know,
yeah.
probably
Yeah,
what you're
exactly.
going to say from medical or from commercial to a specialty or a different or to a patient or not is not going to be exactly the same.
Yeah.
Because it would not resonate the same. But things need to make sense, need to be complementary. You know, so when the patient and the doctor are talking, they understand each other, but probably the message is not going to be exactly the same because the knowledge they have, the situation where they are is not the same.
Exactly.
And
So
the point
one
of-
scientific narrative, right?
Yeah.
They're talking about the same data actually, but in a different way.
100%.
So
Great. So now, closing this off, I think summarizing what we have discussed today is going to be very difficult because there was a lot. But I think that what we have seen is that certainly mission, accountability, and trust is super important, which leads to the leadership and cultural potential change. Maybe you're already there. And also there are bits and pieces that you hopefully took away from today with things to start tomorrow. I hereby thank you, Iria, Berkan, Patrick, for your participation, your insights on behalf of the team here and as well as all of the people watching. And I hand over quickly to Kana, I think.
Dear Klaus and Ilya, Belkan and Patrick, thank you everyone for joining today. We'll continue the discussion at Reuters Pharma 2026 in Barcelona, happening from April 22nd to 24th next year. You can get perspectives from industry leaders and make meaningful connections. We're expecting 1,200 attendees there. For the people who are based in the US, Reuters Pharma USA in Philadelphia happening from March 16th to 17th next year would be the best place. You can find the agenda, speakers, previews, and details on our new networking format on our website, so please have a look. We look forward to welcoming you to Barcelona and Philadelphia. See you soon and best wishes. Thank you again.
Thank you.
thanks everyone.
Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.